everyone. Sorry for the slight delay. We couldn't find the start webinar button, which is always the biggest of technical glitches. My name's Chris Cooper. I've got James Allston, co-founder and co-CEO alongside me, and we're here today to kick off the first of a four-part series selling a successful C&I solar and battery projects, a masterclass. We're really excited to bring this content to you all today. And we know there's a lot of people that have signed up and really interested in learning more about some of the methods that we're going to be discussing. And so I suppose, this course is for anyone who really is looking to, increase their conversion rates and succeed in the commercial and industrial solar and battery segment. So business owners, sales teams, engineers or analysts, consultants. I suppose we're going to introduce some tips and tricks and an entire new mindset and method, I suppose, that we're called the Feasibility First Method, that will essentially help you succeed in increasing conversion rates and communicating effectively to end customers in this segment, and also doing it at a very low cost. And so obviously we're from a company called Orkestra that creates software that help you and enable you to do this. And in today's session, which is the first session there, for deeply understanding customer needs, we're actually not even going to mention our software much at all. So that's our promise to you. This is not a sales pitch. This is actually super informative and consultative, if I may say, to help you understand sort of the initial step of what we see as the ideal commercial and industrial sales process. So a bit of housekeeping before we get started. So just like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung and Palawa people of the land from which we broadcast today in Geelong and Lutruwita. And if you do have any questions as we go, please drop them in the Q&A. You'll see a little button down the bottom, and now we'll vet them towards the end and answer those questions at the end. But I think we won't answer them as we go, but just make sure you text them there and not in the chat. If you do have any issues regarding technical issues or anything like that, please drop it in the chat and we'll try and respond to you to help you there. And I suppose today, there's really two objectives to today's session. Overall, the goal is to deeply understand your customer needs and really understand the Feasibility First Method, which is this end-to-end sales approach, which we are pioneering. And the first step in that method is the process of customer discovery. And so today, we're going to understand, firstly, zoom out a bit and focus on the C&I segment opportunity, because we think that this is the most exciting segment to be participating in the energy industry. And then we're going to zoom into the Feasibility First Method and unpack what that looks like. And then first step in that method is the process of discovery. And then we do have a little bit of homework that's optional. Obviously, it's not like school here. It's completely voluntary to do it, but obviously it's like medicine. It's good for you. And then it'd be good to hear your feedback if you do complete the homework at next week's session. And obviously some time for Q&A at the end. So you got the two co-CEOs of Orkestra here today, James and myself, and we should all be done in 60 minutes. So Orkestra, just the only mention of Orkestra today is this slide. We're on a mission to enable teams like yourselves to decarbonize and electrify the world's businesses. So we're a SaaS business that sells services to businesses that are servicing the C&I energy customers. We've been around since 2021, and we've grown to about 22 team members now. And now 5 of those team members have active experience in, selling commercial and solar energy systems. So me personally, I helped co-found a community solar PPA organization called Repower Shoalhaven. And so that has about 30 systems under PPA in the Shoalhaven area of New South Wales. James and myself also have worked at New Energy Ventures, where we were consulting on a lot of solar systems and advising on appropriate solar systems. You will know some of them, like Melbourne Airport Solar Farm. That's a good example of some work that we did. And the team has been consulted on the content that you're going to experience throughout this course. So we think that it's really high caliber. Obviously, we've built a business out of doing this, and we've got over 90 customers that are the leaders in the C&I segment that are, subscribers to our software. Some of them will obviously be on the call today. And so awesome. We want to make sure that our existing customers are maximizing the value of our services and using them to their potential. But if you're not an Orkestra customer, obviously you'll get this anyway and be able to benefit from this knowledge. And in subsequent sessions, we'll show you how Orkestra can support you in enabling the feasibility first method. Okay, so next slide, James.
Yeah, it's over to me.
Over to James.
G'day, everyone. So I'm going to start taking you through what is the opportunity that we've got in front of us with the commercial industrial space. And we've been doing some numbers recently trying to understand globally what this opportunity looks like. And starting with the Bloomberg New Energy Finance New Energy Outlook from this year, we've worked out that there's about an $8.5 trillion opportunity to decarbonize and electrify the world's businesses. Now, obviously not all of that is in solar and batteries. There's a lot of other electrification opportunities as well that exist, like conversion of gas to heat pumps. But it's important to just underline just how enormous this opportunity is. I think the other thing that's important to understand here is that for many businesses, they don't have the in-house teams that they, and knowledge that they need to be able to actually make these investments as well. And that they're relying upon the sector and the vendors within that sector to really know how to deploy this capital. And these decisions that they've got to make are getting increasingly complex. They're getting increasingly dynamic. There's heaps of choice, heaps of complexity. There's lots of regular decision making. And businesses out there are looking to the sector to truly try and understand, like, what is their next move and how do we make these investments effective? And we have this thesis as a business that the energy service companies, so that's the retailers like Origin of building service teams, it's the solar companies like RACV and others out there, that the ones that become the best trusted energy advisor are going to be the ones that are ultimately the most successful in the market. And that any company out there that is capable of building that trust and doing that effectively is going to be really successful in this market. And when we think about who's on the front line of building that trust, it's sales teams. It's the people that are speaking to customers day in, day out. They're the first contact for a company. They're the most important part of the organization in terms of building the trust. And so those sales teams that really are working to build that trust and most best are going to be the most successful. So now if we just drill down a little bit to Australia and how we're going in terms of the sort of commercial opportunity, and we look at solar in particular. Of the 35 gigawatts of solar that we've installed in Australia, only 12% has been in the commercial industrial sector. And that's pretty small, even compared to utility scale, which is, a pretty nascent market, really. And our view on this is it's really underperforming. And that we, as a sector, I think everyone would agree that the financials aren't really the issue here. Like, we can find really amazing opportunities for just about any particular site. It's the way that we've been selling that's probably needs work and has been a significant gap. And so what we're trying to work to do as a company is really try and unlock this sector and really try and make sure that we are fully juicing this sector for all it's worth. There's also another important thing, which is that solar companies that are relying upon the residential market are really going to have to look at the C&I market if they want to continue to sustain their growth. And we're seeing that, we're starting to achieve the saturation in the residential solar market, whereas C&I, there's plenty of room for growth still. And these are forecasts from Rystad. We think that the C&I market forecasts are perhaps even a bit undercooked in this particular forecast. So what builds trust? Well, our view is consultative selling. I mean, we are consultants in our nature. We've worked as consultants for many years, and we've built up a fairly effective processes of building trust through consultative approaches. And so what we're proposing here is that businesses really need to start thinking about how do they move towards a consultative selling approach that is very customer centric. What does it mean to be customer centric? Well, it means that you're not going out there to sell solar specifically. You're, there's this wonderful German saying, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if you're a salesperson with that mentality, you're probably approaching it in the wrong way. What we're trying to propose here is that if you go out with the mentality of really trying to be customer centric, focused on trying to find solutions that solve the customer's problem, asking lots of questions, building that trust through that question and answer process, that you're ultimately going to be more successful out there. And there's countless examples of various different consultative sales approaches that have been created over the years by various famous authors. What we're doing in this course is trying to take those approaches and distill them down into thinking about how do you apply this in a commercial solar and battery selling approach. So consultative selling really requires very active listening. It requires empathy. It requires a genuine interest in trying to solve the customer's problem. It's not about trying to sell solar, right? It's not about going out there and going, I'm trying to sell a solar solution to this customer. It's about actually stepping back and going, what is the right solution for this customer? Because it may be one of a few other things that potentially is a better solution. And if you can build trust through finding the right solution for a customer from a range of different things that they could do in the energy space, then they may be better primed for actually buying that solar system when you get to it. So what's the process here? The process is really going through a series of questions, starting with who. Like, who are you speaking to? Understanding who they are, making sure they're the right person, then stepping into why and really deeply understanding this. And Chris will go into this a lot more around the who and the why in his the second part of this. Then looking at how, like how can we solve these problems? What are the levers that can be pulled? And then finally finishing with the what. What is it that we're going to sell explicitly? And if we work from left to right in this these series of questions, we're going to get a better solution than if we go in with a pre-canned view of what this customer needs, or just respond to the tender blindly. Customer comes to you and says, I want a 100 kilowatt system, and then you send them out a quote. That if we step back and we start going through this process of really trying to interrogate the customer's challenges, we're much more likely to find a solution that is more likely to be purchased, better meets the customer's problems, and also probably likely to have a higher close rate and a higher gross margin as well. So when we think about like how solar is being sold, we see this pretty consistently that many companies are approaching selling the commercial solar and battery solutions in the same methodology that they've used in selling residential systems. And the problem is that the residential approach really doesn't scale. And so if we go through what this approach looks like, a lead comes in, is qualified, you get on the call and make sure that the customer isn't, necessarily going to waste your time, but I don't quite know how you're really going to qualify them. Then you're doing a site visit, checking the roofs, strong enough, making sure we've got space in the main switchboard. There's places for, installing inverters, etc. Then we're going to start using some piece of solar software to design the solution. We then get one solution out from that process. We might do some feasibility analysis in Excel to try and work out what the savings are going to be, and then we're going to generate a proposal. Now that process in the residential space is pretty fast, right? Like I reckon all the solar salespeople that are on the call here can probably get through this process in a couple of hours. The problem is that when you start moving into commercial industrial, that process doesn't scale very well. And the bigger the systems get, we can start blowing the process out to days, if not weeks. It also prejudges the solution as well. It also starts with the technical design and says, right, the answer is solar, and we're going to design the system to be, to max out the roof. It's really not thinking about answering the customer's problem. And if it is going down that path of doing a consultative sales approach, the type of person that you need to actually be able to do this is someone with a lot of experience, someone that's got a huge amount of knowledge around how to design a particular solution the first time, every time, to meet the customer's problem. Doesn't really allow for much exploration to go on of other potential solutions in the process. Further, if we need to rework anything, we've got to go all the way back from the sales proposal where we're getting the first feedback from the customer, all the way back to the technical design process. And we have to start that whole process again, go through Excel again, and then go through the process of generating the sales proposal. And that rework process can take days again. And we're commonly speaking to engineering teams who are getting frustrated that they've gone and done all this work, and then the sales team can't sell whatever they've gone and produced, and they've got to go and rework the solution. If that's going on, then the sales organization is also building up all this sales risk as well, right? So we've got all these people running around designing solutions, trying to sell them to our customers, generating proposals, days and days and days of work. That's all currently at the risk of the organization that's trying to sell this solution. And the customer at the end of this might just go, oh, you know what? I like the solution from the other guys. I'm going to go with that. Thanks. And all of that's gone. All of that effort has just flushed down the toilet. It really fails to meet the challenge, this particular process. So what Orkestra now enables you to do is really switch things up. And you can do this like with Excel if you wanted to, but it's like it is incredibly challenging because it requires Excel isn't particularly flexible. Orkestra is really a software that enables this process really effectively. And what it does is it takes the feasibility part of the process and it pulls it to the very, very front. And what it acknowledges is that after you've gone and got that customer coming, you can start off with the process of discovery, starting to ask questions, really interrogating why a customer wants a solar and battery solution, getting to the root cause of what they're trying to do. And then you're designing lots of, within Orkestra, you're exploring a wide range of potential solutions that might meet those challenges for the customer. And then you're narrowing in on the solutions that meet the certain buying criteria for that particular customer. That might be the need that they're trying to solve for, but also the budget constraints and other potential constraints that might exist within that site. Orkestra then, of course, allows you to generate feasibility analysis that you can share with the customer, and you can do that very quickly and efficiently. So we're really within about 10 to 20 minutes, you're actually able to get results out of the tool, share them with a customer, get the customer's feedback, and then be able to refine the drivers and refine the inputs into the process and iterate on this process very, very fast. So we're not talking about days of rework. We're not talking about having to engage engineering teams. We're talking about a very quick iterative process that allows you to refine the solution for the customer and then be able to then generate a sales proposal and then stop. And at that point, we've not deployed any engineers, right? We've been able to entirely design a solution that meets the customer's needs, but on the caveat that the engineering hasn't yet been done, right? And that if the customer now wants to proceed, they need now to sign a works order or something that puts them on the hook a bit, because we don't really want to be dispatching engineers and designing this massive solution until the customer is convinced on the commercials of the solution and that it's going to resolve their needs. And once we've got them over the line there, then really they should be taking some and accepting some risk. And so we need to now be thinking about, okay, now it's time to do a site visit on the customer's time. And if the customer now walks away at the end of this process, they're going to pay for the engineering time. And then it's not sunk cost for the solar company. And when we move to this whole process here, we can actually respond much faster. We can also de-risk the process and really make it a lot cleaner to be able to respond to these opportunities. But the best thing is also going to be that we should be able to get the close rates from the point of where we're sending out sales proposals to the actual close. We should be able to get these close rates right up. Whereas in this process here, where we're prejudging the solution, the close rates are likely to be much lower because we're not really designing to the customer's needs, and we're not doing this process in a consultative way that really is building that trust. So this feasibility first method aligns with that consulting process that we're talking about. Starting with the who and the why, which Chris is going to talk to more about in a second. Then Orkestra really allows you to drill into the how and really make sure that we're designing a solution that gets to the right what that we're going to be selling for a customer. And then, so overall, what this process will then should in theory allow you to do is to be able to sell much more holistic solutions. So we're not just talking solar now, we're talking batteries, virtual power plant revenues, EV charges, tariff changes, network upgrades. We're thinking about all the different levers that are available to us to solve particular energy challenges on a site. We should be able to sell the projects on value. So we should be, as a result of that, be able to get higher margins, should be able to lower the sales costs as well, also increase the close rates. And the whole process should also be able to build trust with customers and really enable sales teams to show their solution is meeting the customer's drivers. In the next webinar, we're going to go into the very much on the use of Orkestra and how you go through the design process. But right now, we're going to now step into the discovery process in more detail. I'm going to hand back to Chris for this part of the session.
Thanks, James. So just onto the next slide there, please, James. Right, so just a recap of what James has discussed applied to sort of two different solar company mindsets. So consultative selling, it increases the likelihood that the customer will buy from you, and because you're becoming that trusted energy guide, right? So on the left, we have the typical solar installer mindset. And that is, rooted in more the residential market, which is hyper competitive and breakneck and more cookie cutter, right? So that's where that comes from. It's natural that those things persist. My customer wants a solar system and they buy it off me because my business offers, and you can insert your value proposition there, the best price, best equipment, best workmanship, best after sales. So these are sort of like, from the consultative seller's mindset, it's quite different. Those things are almost prerequisites for any solar business to succeed in C&I, right? They're not strong differentiating factors. And so the consultative seller has those same traits, right? Those same value propositions, but they don't necessarily elevate them because they're more like checkbox issues. What they're doing is saying, I'm going to deeply understand my customer needs, find the best solution to their problem, and educate them on their value. And so the different traits here is that the typical solar installer will talk more than listen. They're trying to explain why they're the best, right? They're uninterested in the needs of the customer. They quote up an arbitrary system size. Maybe it's a cookie cutter size, like 100 kilowatts, 30 kilowatts or something. And they compete often on price. So this leads to the race to the bottom. Whereas the consultative solar seller, they ask a lot of questions up front and listen very carefully. And you are a creative problem solver who acts on behalf of the customer. Right? You're their trusted guide. The consultative process sells itself. You don't have to ram your value proposition down their throat, right? Because you are competing on trust now. And so that's the clear fundamental difference between the two approaches. And in the world of the commercial and industrial customer, where decisions are much more based on, communication of financial value proposition as opposed to speed to lead or price, and much more bespoke solutions as well. This is the mindset that will win. Next slide. And so what we're going to talk about is the who, the why, the what. That's our goal in discovery, is to actively listen and question and gather the information so that we can properly plan out how we're going to approach the opportunity. And by approach that opportunity, I mean, how are we going to sort of find the right solution, which we'll discuss next week, and then ultimately how we're going to communicate the value of the solution and navigate the decision-making process of the company in which we're trying to close the deal on. So who is the customer? Why is the customer considering solar and batteries? And how can we solve their challenges? What are the constraints and opportunities that we need to understand to enter into the feasibility modeling solution stage? Next slide. And so like often you'll have a conversation going, a conversation will be initiated, right? And so, you know, you might not necessarily collect the information around the who or the why or the how in that linear order, because it's going to be an organic flowing conversation. However, you do want to make sure that within the realm of that first conversation, you get enough of the who questions answered. It's really important. You need to know two things. You need to understand if you're speaking to the right person and how the company contact that you're communicating with can help you progress the deal. You also need to understand any personal motivations they will have based on their role and how that might affect the information that you're receiving off them, right? And so what is the role within their company? How can they progress this opportunity? Are they going to be a champion, for example? What are their personal motivations and their organizational awareness? On the decision-making side, on the more company side, you need to understand the process of the company that decisions are made, who influences the decision and who makes the final decision. Often they're separate, and has a similar opportunity been knocked back before? Why? All good context questions on the who. Now, you need to quickly assess if you're speaking to the right person. There's two reasons for that. There's no point wasting anyone's time doing discovery and asking discovery questions to someone who isn't going to be effective at answering those questions. So if they have poor organizational awareness about why we might want to go solar or batteries, for example, or if they cannot progress the deal to the next stage, so if they have no influence or agency within that business on this deal, you actually don't want to waste anyone's time. And you need to leapfrog this person and get to the actual person that is interesting, right? So there's a couple of things to look for, depending on the roles of personas that you might be communicating with. I've got a few roles there: facility manager, sustainability person, financial manager. You might also be speaking with a business owner or a CEO, which is awesome. They're typically going to have the most holistic view of things. It's no issue communicating with any of these people. They can be perfectly fine for discovery. You just need to be aware of any potential common biases, which may cloud the nature of the information. For example, if you're communicating with a facility manager, they might be really risk averse, not so interested in the savings, care a lot more about O&M challenges, and these sorts of things might affect sort of their judgment of the solution that you want to present. So if you are noticing any of the sort of role bias tendencies that I've identified there, which, you know, are very general in nature, they might manifest differently. You probably want to, at a minimum, speak to one other person in a different role to understand, okay, like what is the true organizational view of this? Because the last thing you want is to have everything clouded by a facility manager who cares more about his own role than actually, and then the thing will reach the decision-making point, and it's not necessarily the solution that's solving the holistic customer problem. So there's a couple of prompts I've got there which might help you leapfrog the wrong person to find the right person. And so try anything here. I've just got some examples. Any excuse to get some airtime with another person, even if it means that you don't get the meeting for another 3 or 4 days, or you have to book another call, it doesn't matter. It's worth getting that additional context. So yeah, next slide. So that's on the who. Now, probably as important as the who is the why. And often the conversations will start off with the why. And so when I say why, we're really trying to unpack what the true problem is that they face, or what their true drivers or objectives are for being interested in solar and batteries. And so, yeah, really good example here that we use at Orkestra, right? So we have lots of customers that say, I want to have this feature, right? Like, I think you need this feature. Okay. And like, so we're like, okay, that's good. That's a nice idea. And as sort of the head of product here, what we have to do, and our whole team is trained up on this, is to actually go back to that customer and understand, well, why do you need this feature, right? And we keep asking why. And what we do is that we get to the root problem that they actually face. And that root problem is far more valuable for us when we're trying to create solutions than just knowing what they think their solution should be. Because often the customer doesn't quite know what their problem is. We are, as humans, wired to jump straight to solutions, right? This is in our DNA. That's why everyone's great at coming up with feature ideas for Orkestra. But what we do, we go back to that problem. When we know the problem, we can effectively prioritize how severe that problem is, and we can craft a range of solutions and then match the best solution to the customer's need. And that is always going to be a lot more valuable than simply building what the customer says you should build. Right. And there's no difference here. So this same approach can be used for understanding and selling solar and batteries. The 5 whys method is something that the Toyota founder in the 30s figured out when they were looking at production line challenges. If you just ask why 5 times, you usually get to the root cause of the problem. And that's really the method as well that you guys can use when you're trying to do discovery for solar and batteries. So when somebody asks you, I'm looking for a solar quote, or they say, I'm looking to get, can you give me a price for a 100 kilowatt system or whatever it is, simply ask why. Next slide. So now you don't just say why. It doesn't work. It doesn't flow. It's very stilted and awkward, right? So you have to learn how to frame why in ways that feel conversational and organic. And that's really the trick. And so what we got here is a few prompts and a mock conversation, which shows an example of how we might lace the why into a natural sales call, right? And so let's say that a customer comes to you, and this isn't via an SMS. We don't do SMS sales, right? This is a conversation. So just ignore the bubbles. I'm looking to go solar. And the consultative seller says, sure, I can help you with that. May I ask why you're interested to go solar? So that's really good first question. And that is commonly going to be your first question, I would imagine. And then you're immediately getting information about their goals or their perceived objectives of why they want to go solar. And it might not be solar, it might be batteries, it might be both, it might be something else, right? But the same methods apply. And so there, I've just got a list of different things. They're not going to tell you all those things at once, right? They'll say one of those things or two. But immediately you're peeling off a layer of the onion and getting closer to their root cause for wanting to go solar, right? And so if we keep doing this, we get closer and closer to the true problem. And so those categories there, you got lower power bills. Maybe it's about price certainty. Maybe it's about an investment. Maybe it's about reliability of supply. It might be net zero or sustainability or a mixture of all. They're the common themes that we're going to hear in these sales calls. And so I might just bring James back in to be the customer here. So what we're going to do is I'll ask a few whys. And then we'll just hear James start to open up about their needs as a business. And our job as a consultative seller is to listen the key bits of information that we want to sort of almost jot down or log in our brain. And then we want to go deeper to interrogate those even more. Over to you, James, customer James.
Hi, Chris. How you going? Look,
Great,
mate,
thanks.
I'm really looking to try and get solar.
Oh, yeah, sure. Look, I can help with that. May I ask why you're interested to go solar?
Yeah, well, we really just need to lower our power bills. But also I've really heard that it's a good investment. I've got some friends who've recently invested in solar and they're telling me the returns are fantastic.
Okay. Like it might seem like an obvious question, but why are you interested to lower your power bills right now? Have they been going up lately, potentially?
Yeah, they really have. Like we were spending about 10 grand on electricity, but now I seem to be spending like double and a half that. And it's just getting a really major expense for us. just before we didn't have to worry about our power bills, and now it seems to be just a real hassle for us trying to meet these bills every month.
Okay, let's pause there. So just back a slide, James. So immediately we've just logged a couple of drivers, right? We know that now they want to lower power bills. We have some reference points about what low power bills look like as well, which can help us later. And we also understand that there's a potential investment focus as well here. So there might be some capital they want to deploy. They might be looking at an ROI. And so they're the things that we want to interrogate a bit more. I chose to ask about the power bills, but you might as well easily asked about investment as well, or what their friends were doing. So do you know what is driving the increase in bills, James?
Oh, look, I assume it's mostly due to power rises, but we did expand our facilities. We added a new chilled storage unit recently, so that may be affecting it. I've also got this, strange new network charges on here that I don't really understand. So yeah, like it would be great to understand a bit more about it. But yeah, it's certainly been going up.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, look, I can totally help you with that. What I would love to do just to help is just get access to a couple of bills, maybe one, from a year ago, maybe one recent bill, so I can identify if solar is going to actually help get those bills down. And I might even find a few quick wins to lower your bills while I'm at it.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Thanks for that.
Yep, cool. So what we've done there is, okay, so we've opened up the consultative selling process. So crack the egg. Your goal here in this initial conversation is disarming the buyer, the prospect, right? So that they start engaging and talking, and you're doing the listening. And by doing that, you open that door to the consultative sales process, which is where the trust building starts to emerge, right? While you're doing that, you're learning because you're listening and asking questions. So you're learning more about their needs, right? So we're logging some of that information as we go. We're getting access to bills, which is critical for us to then go into the bills and say, okay, what is actually causing this issue? And we can check that in detail in Orkestra as well. And we'll be able to start thinking, okay, what's the right solution here? If it's a peak demand issue, like James alluded to, is solar actually the solution for that customer, or do we need to do something with a bit more firm capacity? And so the other thing I'll just touch on is that we're not saying why, right? We're not. So you can see that I've got the little prompts at the bottom, which summarize sort of how, how we're getting to the why, but we're not asking them directly why. It's much more conversational. So carrying on, now you mentioned that you viewed solar as a good investment. In what sense, James? How do you judge your investments?
Yeah, so for these sort of cost-saving measures, we're normally tending to approve these investments if they have less than a 4-year payback. But we're also got some sustainability drivers in our organization. We're trying to get to net zero at some point. So yeah, we might be a bit flexible with that metric.
Cool. So this is really good nuggets of information. Now we're starting to get some harder requirements that we can work with when we're looking for solutions, crafting the solutions in Orkestra later. And so this is quite advanced. Not all businesses will be this advanced with their framing of an investment. Some will be, some won't be. But now I suppose the goal here is that we've got more information than the typical solar co would ever get, right? So awesome. We're ahead of them in understanding our customers' needs. And we've got some more objectives that have been dropped into the chat, sustainability, which we want to unpack further. And so already we've learned that they have objectives to lower power bills. They are willing to invest in cost savings with a 4-year payback or less, and they want to improve sustainability in some way. We've got a few other useful tidbits as well, which are going to help us later on. And so we would keep the conversation going, asking more questions on potentially that investment, and are they open to financing? Is there a budget in mind? So constraints and opportunities are going to help us in the how stage there. So that's what I'm doing there. And then in sustainability, it's a very broad general term. Some companies have a mature view of what that means. Some have an immature view. Some it's just the vibe. Some it might be a marketability benefit to their customers. Others got clear, tangible targets that you need to hit. So just understanding and unpacking that is really important, and it'll give you some guidance when you're solution creating later on. Now, what we've got as part of this course, you're going to get a 40 common discovery questions list. And so it's a non-exhaustive list. And it's not like you sit there in a conversation and just rattle them off. That is not how it works. It's like make it conversational. You don't need to ask all the questions. But I suppose that will help you get started and understand the probing things that you should be inquiring about. Now, the more information, the better at the discovery stage, right? But don't fret. You don't need to discover that much to get started. And so when I say get started, it's like, okay, off we go now and do some feasibility modeling. That's what getting started means. And so the bare minimum that you need to get cracking is identified here. And so you need to know in the who camp, can your contact progress the opportunity? Number one. If not, you need to find another. Who influences and makes the decision, and what is the decision-making process? That's the bare minimum. In the why, you need to know their objectives or their problem, however you want to frame that. And if they have hard requirements, it's helpful to know at this point. And then with the how, understand any constraints and opportunities that might be impacting on your solution, right? So a constraint example is budget, and an opportunity would be the willingness to take on finance, right? Because you can leverage that finance. And so in the data, we also need some data. Now, this isn't hard data. It's not hard to get. You probably should get at least one power bill and view it just so you get critical information like tariffs and just to confirm the costs that they say they're incurring. And also it would be useful to know any connection limits on the import, potentially the export, but they're probably less likely to know that. And load data is nice, but not essential. So if it's going to take you a week or two to get load data, to upload it to your feasibility modeling, you don't necessarily need to wait for that if speed to lead is important, because Orkestra has a lot of load libraries already in it and you can scale them up and down. And so that's a summary of what the minimum we need to get started and move beyond discovery. And obviously, as the goal here is that you present an initial solution, and then you will get more information, right? And so the conversation is established and the discovery doesn't end, right? You keep discovering more as you go through. Obviously, the more upfront, the better, but it's an ongoing conversation.
So we have a bit of homework for you guys. We would love if you could go and take some new leads that you've got, or take some old ones, some ones that you want to go and try and re-engage with, and try this discovery process out with some customers. So we've got the discovery question checklist here. And really that's just a process of just getting on the phone and starting to engage with customers and working through this process. We have a bonus that is during the next session, we're going to be modeling projects. And if you would like your project to be modeled during that session, and you feel confident to hand it over, maybe you've got a really curly one that you'd love to challenge us with, you feel free to submit it to the team at the support at orkestra.energy. We'll of course anonymize everything and make sure that it's not we're not sharing leads with an entire group of salespeople here, but that is an opportunity for anyone who would like to do a bit more detailed in this next session that we're going to be on together. So in this next session, we're going to be going through the feasibility first design process. So what is the process of design? We're going to be preparing some playbooks for you guys to start matching solutions to customer needs. So what are the different levers that you can be pulling when a customer gives you, something like, I just need to lower my power bills. What are the solutions to that? What are the solutions to, I want to improve my sustainability? There's a slightly, obviously you're working with very similar solutions here, but there's slight nuances in the way that you might approach particular needs and challenges that a customer is trying to solve for. And so we'll work through those playbooks, and then finally we'll also go into Orkestra and we'll do a bit of a run through of how you can design solutions feasibility first. This session is next Thursday at the same time. It's going to be 60 minutes, and I'll be joined by our head of sales, Tyler Jackman, who was previously at Plyco selling commercial industrial solar solutions there with his team. So that's it from us. We have actually a solid 13 minutes for questions. So Chris, do you want to start off with
I can
some
kick
question
it off.
time?
Yeah, we got a couple from the floor. So just again, use the Q&A down the bottom with your question. One attendee asks, the cost benefit of a virtual power plant can be evaluated through the platform. Absolutely, it can. Obviously, it's for people that know what they're doing. If you're just, virtual power plants are complex, but it's quite easy to model advanced batteries. And you can model very sophisticated virtual power plant business models with the business model builder, which is an advanced feature for the sales subscribers. It's what we do really well, and the product's made for that purpose. Another question, which is around how a salesperson can go to the customer with confidence before going to the engineers in a site inspection. And this is specifically regarding solar modeling capability in Orkestra. And the questioner points out that there's some simplifications in Orkestra about sort of looking, it's hard to assess roof sizes and do different arrays and stuff like that in Orkestra. And that is a fair point, is that Orkestra right now is somewhat simple with its approach to solar feasibility modeling. And that's something that you'd be very pleased to know that is going to drastically change in a couple of months. So we're working on a range of features we call Solar Magic, and Solar Magic is going to transform how people design and sell solar PV systems. So what we're going to do there is automatically look at all the different combinations of how you can design solar systems at a given site. And it's going to be automatic. You'll simply plot a range of different zones on the map, and then we'll automatically be dropping different modules and different array types and creating different solutions that will be simulated in the feasibility modeling engine. And so this is actually the first of its kind globally, where you're looking at rapid batch modeling of different solar PV systems, as opposed to designing one system at a time. And so we're incorporating solar PV deeply into the feasibility first method, and that will be live in October. So stand by for that exciting feature. Any more, I think?
You've got another question there, Chris?
Just reading them. So one is, it's more of a comment about how a consultative approach and strategies need to be prioritized to increase conversion. And if companies don't have people that care or don't have people with the skills, they need to, find new resources and invest in training. Absolutely. Obviously, we've built a business around helping companies like yourself, with the platform that can enable the consultative sales approach. From the ground up, we designed Orkestra to be usable for solar salespeople with minimal technical sort of training, right? So that's from the outset what we've intended to do. And that's obviously there's supporting knowledge like this course, which we're creating to make it easy for you guys to adopt it with confidence. But yeah, that's what we're here for as a business, to enable this method to be easy to adopt.
Yeah, I've also got a question around what can you model today? So you can definitely model solar. If you're really concerned about the roof layout, or you've got some sort of complex system, yeah, it might be worth hopping into Helioscope or something similar like that to do a quick route mapping and make sure determine what the maximum size is for the site. You can then do ranges of system sizes based on that, the generation profiles from those solutions, or you can use weather estimates within the software today. You can do simple behind the meter batteries, where you're just doing looking at demand charge reduction, time of use arbitrage, solar self-consumption. You can add virtual power plant revenues in, so you can look at trading in wholesale markets. You can trade in contingency FCAS markets with the solution. You can do look at the effect of backup power. So if you know what the costs of downtime for a particular site are, and what it costs to get the site back up and running, you can incorporate that into the solution. You can do tariff changes, so you can look at what happens if you change the retail charges, the network charges. You can look at what happens if you increase the network connection on site. So if you've got network limitations on a site, you can increase that. You can look at power factor changes. It's a little bit light on that particular area, but it's there is, as you can see, like there's a very large range of different potential solutions that you might be able to pull on within the software to solve problems that might not just necessarily be, 50 kilowatts of solar or 100 kilowatts of solar. It's very much a platform that you can use to design more holistic solutions for people to be modeling, to be purchasing as a package to solve a particular problem for a site.
I think on that point, James, session 4 in this masterclass is all around turbocharging your solution to solve the customer's problem by leveraging all those additional functionalities. And they are really the secret weapon that educated Orkestra user can use to close deals, because what they do is they drastically improve the value proposition for the customer and improve the value of your deal size as well.
Yeah. We've got some other questions here, Chris. Just needed to scroll down a little bit here. How do we filter out? Sorry, Chris.
Oh, sorry, I was reading a different one. PV-sys generation. Yeah, you can upload PV-sys generation to the application. Yep, and use that if you've got that format.
Someone asked, how do we filter out customers who have not succeeded getting a project over the line the past 2 to 3 times and are now more likely to go through with it? Can we potentially get the decision makers prior to that in a smart and consultative manner? I mean, that's the hope here, right? Like, is that if you've got a customer who's sort of blindly looked at stuff in the past, if you can re-engage them with a consultative sales approach, this hopefully is a fresh way of approaching that particular customer and building that trust to get the deal over the line.
Naimas, hi Naeem. Are you guys looking to include bifacials in the near future as part of Solar Magic? And yes, we are. So you'll be able to model bifacial arrays for open rack or like single axis tracking very accurately. And also there's a PV module library coming as well, which you'll be pleased to hear about. So you can accurately model those things within a couple of months.
We've also got one here from someone who asks what markets do we enable participation in? Yes, in the NEM and also the WEM. If you're in another market, you can also upload the market data into the software as well. So if you're in New Zealand, for example, you can upload the node prices for a particular node into the software and be modeling with those as well.
Pratik, that's a funny one. I don't know if that's a question. How do you stay so calm?
Thanks, Pratik.
Do we meditate? No, I wish I had time for that, Pratik.
Yeah. I did go for a mountain bike ride this morning, so yeah, that tends to help.
Andrew asks, can we expect to see a solution soon where we can upload interval data, specifically where there's an existing system that is being removed and replaced, so you can rebuild the interval data back to the core load? Yeah, great question. There's no shortage of people that want that feature. I can't give you an exact date, Andrew, but it is definitely getting done in the midterm. Obviously, the more solar systems that are out there, the more common it is that we're dealing with customers that have existing solar. And I do understand that the existing approach is a little bit cumbersome to work with. And so, yeah, that's definitely on the roadmap to resolve that properly.
So that's all our questions. Thanks very much, everyone, for your time today. We'll see you in a week's time for the next presentation. Yeah, if you could stay on at the end of the webinar once I close it out. There is a little bit of a survey. We'd love to get your feedback on this presentation. We're planning to run this training relatively frequently. So if you do have others that would like to do it in the future, you can get them to sign up now, and they'll already be able to take part and watch the recordings of this. We'll send out the presentation from today straight after this as well. But getting that feedback would be fantastic, because we'd like to refine this training and continue to deliver it in the future. So thanks very much. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers. Good luck with the discovery question homework.
Yeah, good luck with the homework, everyone. Yeah. Catch you later. Bye.